Somebody was asking me about Oyster and how they were able to bring in developers to develop that school, and I was talking about the challenges that's created, because when I was on the board and including now, developers think that schools are development plots. There's people that in the city that don't even call that Marie Reed over in Adams Morgan. They call it Plot 46 because they think it's development territory. But we brought in the first master facilities plan so that parent groups didn't have to organize to figure out how they could go raise their own money to get an actual roof that kept the leaks out of that school when they sent their kids there, or that kept it warm in the winter or cool in May and June. We brought a master facilities plan through extensive community engagement. We had community meetings all through the city. And by the time we were done, we had a $3.2 billion funded budget for our schools that laid out a plan and a vision based off of this community's input for what schools would look like over the next 10 years. A plan, a $3.2 billion budget that said every school in the city would be modernized in the next 10 years. And that was funded, and people could see when their own school or their neighborhood school was scheduled for modernization. And we also brought in, while I was there, the first master education plan of the city, which is still in a lot of parts being adhered to and driving reform in the city, but other parts clearly are not. But that was the first time the community had been engaged collectively in being able to see a plan for what education should look like in this year, begin to look like by 2010. So by 2007, the Board of Education I ran for was abolished. And I took my leave, and that's where I found my home in DC Voice, where I'm an executive director now. So I've been the executive director at DC Voice for 3 years, and I've had an opportunity to learn a lot of things there and accomplish a few things too. So for instance, since taking over, we've been able to go from organizing and training a few dozen parents and community members a year to engaging in 1 month, just last year, sitting down with over 400 residents across the city, to sending 200 community volunteers in the schools each year, every September, to talk to DCPS principals, charter principals, teachers all across the city, over 100. We went from doing an audit of a small sampling of schools in the District of Columbia of about 4 dozen to doing basically a census of all the schools in the city, over 100 every year for the last 3 years, where we've gone in, trained community members to sit with principals and bring back that data to the community so we could begin to change policy. And that's what we're beginning to do. And DC Voices has taught me that extraordinary things could happen when ordinary people got together collectively and begun to work on something, and taught me that community engagement isn't an obstacle to government reform. It's a necessary prerequisite to it. And that community members will be engaged and will engage in difficult conversations if given the chance. There's nothing scary about that, and that people want to be part of this conversation. So with a lot of things accomplished at DC Voice, we were able to attract new funding from as far as New York City to Seattle to invest in our local cause. We were able to get communities like Pittsburgh to say we want to engage our community the way DC Voice has around education, and even pay us tens of thousands of dollars to send our staff up there and show them how to launch their own projects, to engage ordinary citizens in a discussion and a dialogue and a debate about school reform. And so with a lot of things accomplished, but still a lot more and many more to be done, some people have said, why would you want to get back into politics? Because of course a lot of folks believe that politics is still nothing but thieves and liars and FBI probes and investigations and other wards other than Ward 1 have problems too. But I said, and try to remind folks that politics wasn't always that way. Elected politics used to be how the little man had a voice downtown. Elected politics was how we had representation in how our governments were run. But
sure thing is about them now.
You know, and lately it's become simply a voice for developers, a voice for big business, a voice for people with money, and ordinary folks like us are left without access. So that's why we said before Christmas we're going to launch an exploratory committee. A lot of folks have said, been calling us up, telling my wife, your husband should run, Jeff, you should run. I said it's one thing to push me from behind, it's another thing to believe you could stand here with me, to stand alongside me. And so that's what we're going to find out in the rest of December and January and February. How many folks in the city actually will come stand with me Beginning in the cold, how many folks will come knock on some doors? We're going to set up a pilot phone bank out of my house. And how many folks will come help us call people around the ward? And if it becomes the case that a lot of people believe that extraordinary things could be done by ordinary people if we work together, then I think together this ward, the younger folks and the older folks of the ward could form our own new social compact between citizens, the government, small businesses that says, again, we like a target here, but we like diversity in business choices. We like nice condos, but we need nice schools still in the city. And it's okay to have press conferences and new safety bills introduced every couple of weeks or months, but if police who care about our community and understand our community are not in our community and in our neighborhoods, people don't feel safe. And so while on paper crime rates have seemed to gone down, younger people fears have gone up. Older people in Ward 1's fears have gone up. People who just leave their condo or their apartment to go to work every day and want to come back safe, their fears have gone up. And why school reform seems to be something that everybody, including our government, talks about, the discord and the political arguments over school reform have left out what we designed school reform around in the first place, which was to improve the lives of young people. So I'm asking you guys to join this small founding committee and help me take that message and some of these things around school reform, responsible development in our community, safer communities, and just improving the quality of life and making sure ordinary people have access to our own government and to our ward. And I think, as I was talking to some of you about this, that one thing we could assure is that a government or an elected official who's never really had competition and therefore never had to address some of those very things and could just show up at meetings and shake some hands and leave people feel that they were addressed, that they would actually have to take a stand in 2010 on issues that affect this community, on issues that affect more than just people with money. I mean, just yesterday, if you look at the last 7 days news, it would seem like I constructed it around a good time to say, I'm going to launch an exploratory committee. In the last 7 days, just yesterday in the news, today in the newspaper, they talked about land giveaways and tax breaks to Donatelli and other developers, some of the biggest developers in the city, in this region, because they built these humongous condos on Georgia Avenue in Ward 1, and it cost $500,000 and now nobody's moving into them. So they're struggling.
The tax break goes for the one about Columbia Heights Metro, which was on DC government land we used.
And we gave them, so now we're not just giving them tax rebates, but we gave them the land in the first place. And you and I finance that. Your business helped finance that. And our income taxes, if we work in DC, help finance that. And our home taxes, if we live in DC, help finance that. And when you talk about police, just today, one of our DC police officers was arrested for murder. Just yesterday, 2 DC police officers hit and ran over a kid, broke his wrist, and didn't even stop their squad car. Didn't even, but somebody had to call the police for the same police that hit him to come back to the scene of a crime that actually police committed. And people wonder why our young folks don't feel safe. Well, that's not who they call when they feel intimidated in their schools, why they join gangs instead of call 911. And these are some of the things I think we can make a government address and stand for and stand up for. So I'm here to launch the beginning of a small exploratory committee that we hope over December, January, and February would grow and let us know whether in March or April we could form a campaign. And so as you drink your glass of wine or your bottle of water, I'd like you to do that with each other and meet some of the other folks in this room who might be interested in coming out and helping make some phone calls or knocking on some doors or just holding a meeting or just putting up a sign. And as you leave and you go home tonight, on your way home, think about who you might know in Ward 1 that would want me to come into the living room and do the same thing and talk to them and find out what they treasure, what they tinker, what they trash about Ward 1. Think about who you know in Ward 1 or elsewhere in the city or elsewhere in the region that might be interested in coming out and help, because we're here to launch an exploratory committee. I hope for my neighbor's sake, for my community's sake, for the city I grew up in, for the sake of my daughter, and for the sake of young people, that you'll join me. So thanks for having me.